Madam President, I rise to oppose the nomination of FTC Commissioner Rohit Chopra to be the CFPB director. In the Banking Committee, every Republican voted against him. And on the Senate floor, Republicans have uniformly voted against discharging his nomination from the committee. There's a reason for that, Madam President. And I think my colleagues have the same grave concern that I have that Commissioner Chopra would return the CFPB to the lawless, overreaching, highly politicized agency that it was during the Obama administration when he was there. CFPB, as you'll recall, was created by our Democratic colleagues through the Dodd-Frank Act, and it was arguably the most unaccountable agency in the history of the U.S. federal government. Think about it. It's an agency with a single director who, until recently, even the President of the United States was unconstitutionally forbidden from firing. And this agency is not accountable to Congress through the appropriation process the way most agencies are. Most rely on appropriations from Congress for their funding. That's part of our power of the purse strings. Not with the CFPB. It simply draws virtually unlimited funding at its discretion from the Federal Reserve, whether Congress likes it or not. Now, during the Obama administration, the CFPB systematically pursued an activist anti-business agenda. It limited consumer choice, it drove up the cost of credit for consumers, and it certainly unfairly burdened employers with overregulation. CFPB repeatedly engaged in overreach and abuse of its authority. Just one example, instead of clearly laying out the rules of the road through a transparent regulatory process, it would invent rules on its own by springing lawsuits on the financial institutions that had no way of knowing that they were engaged in anything that the CFPB objected to, because there was no rule. It was just rulemaking by enforcement. The D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals, quite rightly, held that this approach violates the fundamental bedrock principle of due process. But that's not all. So Commissioner Chopra helped set up the CFPB. And then he served as a very high-ranking official there during the Obama administration. In that role, it's been widely acknowledged that he had a hostile relationship with lenders. He used name-and-shame tactics to pressure them. In one case, he took this shoot first, aim second approach to the facts by posting online inaccurate allegations about credit unions, which the CFPB then later had to retract. At the FTC, Commissioner Chopra has continued his aggressive anti-business stances, and he's continued to take a shoot first, aim later approach to the facts in order to advance his agenda. In one recent case, 3 of his fellow commissioners publicly rebuked Commissioner Chopra for, and I quote, his disregard of the facts and the law, for making misleading claims, and for relying on false assertions. And during this whole nomination process, while Commissioner Chopra is under consideration to lead the CFPB, he's done very little to alleviate these concerns. So I asked him a question for the record. Given its history, given the actions that have been overturned by courts, was there a single CFPB enforcement action that Mr. Chopra believed was too burdensome or was too punitive? He couldn't identify a single one. In addition, Commissioner Chopra favors unaccountable regulators with vast powers. He actually, in writing, proposed this super agency that would regulate politicians and think tanks and nonprofits. And at his nomination hearing, Commissioner Chopra once again defended the CFPB's completely unaccountable structure. All of this raises concerns about how he would wield power at the CFPB. And remember, at the CFPB, he would not be accountable to Congress in any meaningful way, certainly not through the appropriations process. And since the CFPB is a single director agency, there'd be no other commissioners to restrain him. And Commissioner Chopra has also shown a complete disregard already for congressional oversight. So according to multiple press reports, the Biden administration's political leadership at the CFPB has been taking unusual and possibly unlawful actions to push out top-level career non-political civil servants at the CFPB in order to fill those civil service positions with hand-picked activists who will support the Biden agenda. Now, the implication has been that this was done in preparation for Commissioners Chopra taking over as the director. So these were just allegations, but there were several of them. There was some credibility to them. So I sent Commissioner Chopra a letter simply asking, in a straightforward way, whether he was aware of or whether he had been involved in any efforts to dismiss these career civil servants at the CFPB. Well, Madam President, it's been over 100 days since I asked him these simple, straightforward questions, and he has refused to provide any response to me. His refusal to respond to my oversight request — I'm the ranking member of the committee that has jurisdiction over the organization he's meant to lead — this refusal to respond to a simple oversight request is completely unacceptable from a nominee, and it leaves very little doubt about how he'll treat congressional oversight if he's confirmed. As all of the Republicans on the Banking Committee have stated, and I quote, "In our view, this should disqualify him from consideration as CFPB director." So, Madam President, it's clear to me that Commissioner Chopra would very likely return the CFPB to the rogue, unaccountable, anti-business agency it was during the Obama administration. And we have every reason to believe he would continue to disregard legitimate congressional oversight requests. So I urge my colleagues to join me in voting against his confirmation. And I yield the floor.